I'm Chris Linden, and this is the Matt Balaker podcast.
All right. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast, where we're joined by Eric Servone, our executive producer. How you doing, Mr. Servone?
Great to be here as always, Matt.
It should be, because today we're in for a unique treat, because this is a fellow trophy husband. So a guy I've known for literally probably 30 years. He grew up in a town between Encinitas and Oceanside. He's run with coastal elites in California and New York before settling down in Nebraska. He's an attorney, advisor, investor, a seed stage backer of Greg Giraldo, A Comedian's Story, and just an all-around damn good human being. Please welcome Chris Linden to the program. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. After that, I'm doing a lot better.
I'm here to bring you up before we systematically just take you down peg by peg throughout this interview. So I'm glad we're starting at an apex.
Good.
Well,
yeah, no, go ahead.
For people who haven't seen you, I mean, you look great. I don't want to say your age, but you're above 30, and
above 30,
you're in the best shape of your life. What gives?
100%. So yeah, I mean, I'm 40. I just turned 40. It was depressing, but we were in Italy. And it was phenomenal. My wife did this surprise trip. We did the trophy husband, the thing you mentioned before. But yeah, no, about 3 years ago, well, 2 years ago. So you know how COVID, everyone had basically blew up and got out of shape during COVID. Yes. I did the opposite.
Oh.
And it was mostly driven by I looked around. I have young kids just like you, and I was looking around and I'm doing the math in my head, being they're going to be playing sports when I'm 55, and I was I need to get in shape. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was massively obese, but if you look at the
morbidly so,
no, not morbidly so, but
I'll give you at least 12 months of
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So if you look at the definition of obesity, right, that the CDC, our CDC that can't, really get anything straight. It's ridiculous how you're only 5 pounds above the weight that they suggest you should be. Mm-hmm. And you're obese by definition. Yeah. Right. So it's when you start to look at that, it's very depressing, right? It's it's very depressing. So yeah, so I just started. First, I dieted. I lost 65 pounds over 9 months. Yeah, it was crazy. And then nutrition, health guy that I know does, sort of personal training was if you really want to get in shape, you have to start doing some lifting, He was selling me, obviously.
Eric is so tempted to ask how much you bench. She's just
I have a million questions I want to ask.
Yeah. So I could, so about a year ago, I started to go. So instead of losing weight, I started to try to build muscle. So that's kind of, I'm a year into that right now. And I can give you my stats. I mean, in terms of
you've really said more than we ever wanted about this topic.
There you go.
For those tuning in, please check out his Instagram page. He has plenty of shirtless photos from his various exotic excursions. It's hard to catch you between jet sets, and we did it today. So
I'm most curious about the diet, though. What were you eating? What did you change about your diet that helped you lose all that weight?
So what's great about losing weight is Matt, being my math tutor, will know that it's calories in and calories out. It's very simple, right? There's all these diets, there's all these things that if you don't eat calories, or you burn more calories than you take in, mm-hmm. you will, by definition, lose weight. And so all I did was start paying attention to how many calories I was eating. I mean, what was so shocking to me when I started to just Google, do my, my scientific research about losing weight was no matter who you talk to, right? No matter what you read at, everything, it's all about eating healthier, right? But if you actually go to Whole Foods or you go to one of these self-proclaimed health food stores, and you start to read the calories, the ingredients, and all that kind of stuff, it's not the calorie. There's a lot of calories in a lot of that stuff. And yeah, it's like kale. Kale's super healthy. Mm-hmm. Kale's super healthy. But if you eat 1,000 calories of kale, okay, you're still eating 1,000 calories.
Right.
That's it. So that was eye-opening for me. And all I did was, it took a lot of discipline, which I don't have a lot of in a lot of areas of my life, but my vanity knows no bounds.
Oh, okay.
So I was sick and tired of just, kind of being out of shape and so I was driven to do it, but it's still to this day is shocking when I meet people and they're like, well, how did you lose so much weight? How did you get healthy? And you tell them what I'm telling you guys, and the look on their face is like, that can't be right. We
want to hear something else, like avoid almonds for 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. And again, almond is a perfect example, Matt. That's a great example. You look at the calories and the amount of fat that's in an almond. Okay, you shouldn't be eating almonds if you're trying to lose weight at all. Almonds are not good for you. They are. If you have 1 or 2 almonds, they have some good vitamins, some nutrition. There is nutrition there, but they're basic. I mean, there's a reason they make milk out of almonds. There's a lot of fat in there.
And almonds have nipples. That's another thing I've learned about.
They do?
Oh my! You get milk from them.
Oh, I guess if you can milk them, yes.
I like how for those.
That's the meet the parents rule.
Yeah. On the YouTube feed, you guys are getting a special treat because Chris keeps conspicuously lifting his right arm, like seemingly to stretch. It's like, oh wait, look at this.
I was just pointing. I'm Italian. I talk with my hands. Eric knows. Yeah.
Are you guys gonna tell?
I keep my hands tied down. The only way I avoid knocking everything over.
Yep.
Well, we're very impressed with your physical transformation, but I got to be honest, Chris Linden, when we met decades ago, I always knew you were smart, good dude, would not have necessarily thought law school.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Well, I think maybe what Matt's referring to is there was a time in my life when my interaction with the law was not law school. Let's just leave it at that. Honestly, I always kind of wanted to be like the John Grisham lawyer, like the movie lawyer, as Eric and me will talk about, I'm sure at some point, either here or later. That's not what being a lawyer is like at all. Maybe there are some lawyers that get to have that life. That was not my experience. But I was kind of at a place where I went to UCSD for undergrad. You graduate and you're like, what am I going to do? I was at a crossroads. I was either going to go be a poli-sci professor, which would have been terrible for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I wasn't smart enough. Right. What's crazy is everyone says, finance and the law and like the higher levels of those two are very competitive, right? Mm-hmm. You want to talk about a competitive field, this, Matt. Education, academia, one of the more competitive fields. I was basically told like you're going to have a hard time getting a job, and it was like if I would have said to my dad, I'm going to go like to med school, he would have been like, you're not smart enough. You're just not smart enough. So law school by default, law school was where I went, and I incurred, oh my God, I think I still have. I went to law school in New York. I think I still have $230,000 of debt.
Oh, wow.
Which thanks to Joe Biden and, well, I guess Trump too, I haven't had to make a payment on in almost 2 years. And they're going to extend that.
Just keep milking the system
I have to. I follow the rules, Matt. I follow the rules.
Yes, you do. You're
like any good lawyer.
ESQ. Yeah. So I want to, Eric, how does this kind of mesh with your decision to go to law school?
I mean, it's the story of, I think, 80% of people who go to law school, which is like they were smart kids with a poli-sci degree or an English lit degree or whatever it is, even an econ degree. And you're just like, yep, communications. Yep, there's one. And you're like, all right, now what the hell do I do? Like, I've been following what I was supposed to do up until this point, and now I'm 22 with a bachelor's degree, and no one's telling me what to do now, and I'm lost. And you're like, I'm not smart enough to go to medical school. I don't have the prereqs for medical school. So law school, what a lot of people don't realize is there's no prereqs for going to law school. All you need is a college degree. So you can go to law school with any kind of background, and that's what most people who go to law school just end up doing it because they don't know what else to do, and they figure, hey, at least for the next 3 years, I don't have to decide what I want to do, which sounds retarded when you think about like the hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that people are going in to do this thing where they're putting off their year for 3 lives. Like, go work at McDonald's for 3 years and figure out what you want to do, because at least you're making $8-9 an hour
and getting a discount on food too.
Right.
Your parents won't brag as much if you work the fry station at Mickey D's than if you're a second-year law student, though.
Right.
So you got to keep that in mind.
That's true. My dad, it's so funny that like that generation, you mentioned my dad, like I've done some pretty, in my mind, like some pretty cool stuff, like since leaving the big firm, he still talks to his friends. He's now retired in South Carolina in Charleston, and he tells all of his friends about how I'm a lawyer and like I work at these big white shoe law firms in New York. And I'm like, that was the worst thing I ever did. It was so painful. It was the worst thing. You like, Matt, you talked about the book, the Greg Giraldo book, like he worked at Skadden, and he tells a story about how it was terrible. It was terrible. And now that like I have my own things going on, like my own firm and then my own investment firm and things like that, he could care less. He's like, those are little hobbies that you have,
you're pushing dollars around.
It's just crazy.
You did a 2-year stint in big law, Latham and Watkins, maybe more, but you kind of touched on the soul crushing nature. What did you think before you got the job? And then, years later, what do you think about it now?
So I wouldn't say that Latham, I think Latham is the best of the big law firms by far. And by the way, I was in LA.
You hear that, Latham?
Yeah. No, that one said that. I still do business with them. So
both Latham and Watkins subscribe to this podcast.
No, they were in LA too, by the way. So that was in LA. So I started my career at Weil Gotshal in Manhattan.
Oh, okay.
And the first thing that I was in the restructuring group, and that was not by choice. It was 2008. And they said, which group do you want to work in? And I said, I want a job, so I'm going to go to the restructuring group. Well, a little bank called Lehman Brothers had filed bankruptcy, and Weil Gotshal was the debtor's counsel. Oh. So the entire department, and I'm not like, I was checking the receipts and like making sure that the bills, I was involved, but like not really. But it was GM, we filed General Motors, we filed their bankruptcy. I mean, it was a cool experience because even though I was just tangentially involved, the things I was working on were on the cover of the Wall Street Journal every day, because at that point, the world was falling apart. Washington Mutual, we were involved in that, and American Airlines, all those cases went through that department. So it was a great experience, but I didn't know my kid for the first 2 years. I mean, I was working 80 to 90 hours. Everything you've heard, that was that. Okay. Latham in LA, I think that big law had evolved by that point to some extent. And people in LA, even before COVID, were working from home a lot more. It was a much more enjoyable experience. Plus, the partners there surfed. Some of them surfed, some of them had lives, in New York, that just wasn't the case. They didn't have lives, and it was all about who you were going to dinner with. And, like very American Psycho almost back, so it was very weird. So the Latham experience was great. The only reason, and it was fortuitous, the only reason that we moved back from LA to Lincoln, and the only reason I left Latham was my wife's father got sick, and we came back here. And my wife's business was sort of taking off at that point, and it's based in the Midwest. So that was kind of, it all came together, but I loved Latham. I would go back. If there was one law firm that I would go back to, it would be Latham in big law, for sure.
Okay.
They're a decent firm. They're good people.
Well, I want to get Eric's take. You worked as a corporate lawyer for a couple of years, right? What did you expect, and what was the reality?
Yeah, it was just under 2 years. I wasn't in Manhattan. I was in Pittsburgh, but it was very similar story to Chris, which was, it was the Marcellus shale boom. And so they said, where do you want to work?
Oh, yeah.
And it was oil and gas. I mean, that's where the money was, because I was back home in Pittsburgh. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't 80, 90 hours a week, but also none of the partners surfed. So I think probably it was somewhere between your experience in LA and New York was my experience.
Yep.
Which was, I mean, again, it was the experience that I had heard about. It wasn't anything I hadn't expected. I didn't realize just how much I would hate it. I think was part of it was like, I kind of tricked myself into thinking, all right, this is a nice paycheck. And this is, again, it's just like, well, this is the next step. It was the path of least resistance was kind of how I took my early career, which was just like, all right, this is where I go next. All right, that's what I'll do. And it hit a point where I was just like, I'm not going to be successful doing this. I just can't sit here every day.
Yeah. And your personal life suffers. I mean, I loved it when they were like work-life balance. It's like, that it doesn't exist. It just can't exist, right? The model doesn't work if the associates aren't grinding all day, every day.
Right.
And they know that if you burn out, there's another crop of kids who, again, they're ready to come up and do your job, and they'll do it for 2 or 3 years before they burn out, and then you get the next crop in. So it's a weird system, but it keeps going.
There's a new vintage. It's
right.
Perfect.
Yeah. Right.
So Chris transitioned from that, and now you work more in investments.
Sure. Without
getting too deep in the weeds, what are some of the valuable skills that you gleaned from law school or learned from law school that you apply today?
I think, and I've had this, someone explained this to me. This is not my original thought, really. I mean, it's evolved a little bit, and I found it to be true. Law school teaches you the corporate language. That's basically what it is. And there's a language that is spoken in corporate boardrooms, for lack of a better phrase, right? And it's the language of investment as well. There's a lot of intersections there. I would say that what has probably been the most transferable skill that from law is digesting a very large amount of information quickly. Because even in law school, that was one of the things. They don't teach you much in law school, but one of the things they teach you is you have to read. They give you assignments that are sort of, they know you can't get done, and part of the goal is to just push so much information through you, right? Studying for the bar is a perfect example, right? Like the idea that you can take so much information and try to jam it into your brain. You start to teach yourself that you have to find a shortcut, or you're never going to get it done. And the shortcut is to try to, distill information quickly, know where to go, and not miss things, right? And that is extremely important when you're looking at a term sheet, or you're sitting in an investment meeting and the founder. We should talk about that, Matt, by the way, that time we met in LA and you're like, I know that guy.
Yeah,
and
we went to college together.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing is understanding that this, sort of taking a large chunk of information and cutting away the stuff you don't need and focusing on being able to identify the things you have to focus on. That's about the only skill that was transferred. And writing, I guess, writing emails quickly. That was about it.
And how to wear expensive suits.
And expensive suits. I got rid of all my suits. That was the best thing ever.
Oh,
they were already phasing out. I mean, so LA, that was why I loved practicing law in LA. It was great. I mean, no one was trying to wear suits anymore, right, at that point. That was 2015.
Ew.
The suits were already gone at that point. But yeah.
Old news. So I want to kind of turn the floor to Eric Servone for a moment, because he's a little bit of a rabble rouser these days. He has some interesting ideas that are on his Substack that we'll link to. But
Okay.
The floor is yours, Eric. I want you to share some ideas with us.
You want me to get into my abolish law school position?
Yes, let's go for it.
I mean that's the basic idea is kind of what Chris mentioned, which is a lot of people graduate college not knowing what they want to do, and so they end up going to law school, which, again, like Chris said, doesn't really teach you how to be a lawyer. And for really the early part of American history, there was no such thing as law school, but we still had lawyers. The idea was that people who wanted to be a lawyer would apprentice. They called it reading law. They would apprentice under practicing lawyers, and that gave you an idea of what it meant to practice law. You actually saw what the work was. You got paid whatever, some small amount, but you got to actually see what the practice of law was like while learning from someone who was actually doing it, as opposed to spending 3 years and $200,000 in school learning from people who mostly have never even practiced law. And so that's the basis of my argument. I don't know where you want to go with it, but
I agree 100%.
Lightning rod. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I agree 100%, and I think the thing that I always draw, like when we have this, because we get into this conversation a little bit less focused on the apprenticeship, but that is funny though, because at my first firm there was one partner who was older than. He was very old, and he would have his favorite associate get a desk in his office. And that's a traditional apprentice. They still do that in England. You sit in the office with the more experienced attorney and you watch them do it. I think law school is the same thing, and all of college, by the way. I mean, college is important. Don't get me wrong, but I think that, the mortgage crisis and law school, and it's the same thing. The government is pumping money into a system, and that system is becoming it's a bubble basically. And educators you can't blame them. I mean, professors are making a lot of money, and if the government's giving away free money, then why not? I just think that. And then the number of law schools that are out there too. I mean, that's another, don't get me started on that. But when someone asks,
how has that changed? From maybe 40 years ago till now?
Yeah. So Eric, I don't know what your view is on this. I mean, I know in California, there's a number of unaccredited law schools where, I mean, it's basically, three of us could start a law school. It's not that hard, and we could go out there, and it's hard to get accredited. Right. That's actually takes some. But in California, some states, New York doesn't allow this. I'm sure there's other states, but, California being the constant, I don't even know.
Pillar of righteousness.
Yeah, well, they want everyone to be equal, except for the governor, right? They want everyone to be equal. So I think in California, they were kind of like, we need more opportunity for people. So let's create let's allow these unaccredited schools. And the unaccredited schools, are basically just traps for people. They come and they take out a bunch of debt, and they can't get a job. Not only can they, some of them can't pass the bar. The reason why the passage rate is so low in California and in states with these unaccredited is because a lot of these people weren't really taught anything in law school, right? And so I agree 100%. If someone asked me today, should I go to law school? My initial answer is no. Don't go to law school. And if they press me more, I say, well, what do you want to do with your law degree? And if they say, I want to help people and I want to work for I want to be a public defender or something like that, I'm like, how much money does your family have? Because if you don't have to earn a living and you're well off and you're blessed like that, do it. Yeah. Do it, right? We need public defenders. We need people. But if someone says, I want to go to law school and they don't have a good answer, the answer is no, don't do it. Don't do it. Go get a job doing sales, right? Go get a job, learn a skill. Okay. And go that route. I think that there was a lot of pressure, and I think it's going away, Eric. I know a lot of people who are graduating college who are going into the workforce or not going into the workforce. That's a whole nother story. But it's been a while since someone asked me, should I go to law school? Maybe that's because I'm getting old and I don't have friends that are,
I still get that question a lot. I still get it a lot.
Yeah. So I agree, Eric. I think law school is a joke, frankly,
Well, playing devil's advocate a little bit as the non-lawyer among us,
mm-hmm.
A lot of the regulations and rules are such that you need to go to law school, to get hired as a lawyer. And like, we need lawyers to defend property rights, to defend people accused of crimes, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, who is law school appropriate for right now, in your opinions?
I was on a call earlier today with a client who's a savvy business person. He has a Harvard MBA. He's a bright guy, and there was 2 lawyers on the call, including myself. And we were both explaining a statute, right? A law. Well, to be clear, the other lawyer was explaining the statute to the client. I was listening. You
were holding a plank during the.
Yeah, I was listening, right? and the client was like, just send me the statute. I'll look at it. It's not rocket science, right? We lawyers create a language just like any profession so that we can have a monopoly. We have a bar association. You can't be a lawyer. If you're a corporation, you have to have a lawyer represent you in almost every state. You can't go pro se. You can't go, you can't represent yourself if you're a corporation. So if you're a small business owner and you need to sue someone, the state laws, which guess what? Lawyers wrote them, okay, require you to go hire a lawyer, right? So there is a need for lawyers. I think that law school, we're being a bit flippant about it, right? Like,
it's a podcast. That's the point. We're not people.
You can do law school in 6 months, right? There are certain things you learn in law school, like, I don't know, how to use Westlaw, the search system that tells you where the statutes are. Like I was on law review because, I don't know how it happened, but I was on law review and they teach you how to do the citations, right? And it's ridiculous, right? Like you argue over like whether it's italicized or bolded based on like looking at the font. I mean, the amount of time that we would take editing these law review art, it was insane, but everyone does it. Yeah. And it's law school could be done in 6 months and they could teach you, and then they would push you into like an apprenticeship, right? And you're talking about people, particularly real lawyers, not corporate lawyers who have to go into court and not look like an idiot. Those lawyers, they probably would need like a year. They would probably need a year of law school, but 3 years is it's ridiculous that you don't need that much time. You don't.
What I'm not arguing with you, counselor. Yeah. But what are the roadblocks? I mean, this sounds cool.
It is funny that you're arguing with 2 lawyers right now. It's actually really
I'm
funny.
the son of one, so it reminds me of my childhood. Business school counts for something, all right, folks?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
So no, you're making convincing arguments, but there's a lot of, I guess, inertia that would have to take place to change anything. What realistically could happen to implement some of the changes you guys are advocating? I see Eric making a little bit of dollars.
Dollars. It's all, yeah. No,
school, these schools are making millions of dollars. I mean, that's why there's so many law schools open, especially post the recession, because colleges were looking for new profit centers and they realized law schools have such low overhead. It's not like you need labs, you need all this equipment, you need classrooms,
not many cadavers.
You need the highest paid professors on campus, which that's a separate argument. But the law school is a money making machine, and so. I mean, until you change that incentive, I don't see how you're going to have any kind of real major change.
And I think that goes back to the free money, the spigot, right? The government spigot. I mean, not everyone, and this is going to be the part in this podcast where this is going to go viral, and it's going to it's going to ruin my life, right? Because I'm going to say this. Not everyone should go to college. Not everyone should, definitely not everyone should go to law school. Mm-hmm. And by the way, just to make it less controversial, I'm including myself in the not everyone should go to law school, okay? Because there's a sense, it's just like not everyone should own a home, I probably shouldn't have owned a home the first time I bought a home, frankly. It worked out, but like renting is a perfectly good option. I mean, it sometimes is the better financial decision, not when we're in an inflationary economy. I mean, it's great to own assets now, but it's the same thinking for me between sort of like home ownership and renting versus going to college or going to a vocational school or going directly into the workforce. Some of the happiest guys I know, okay, and ladies are in jobs that did not require higher education.
Yeah.
And not only are they happy, but they're doing just fine financially, and they never had to worry about whether they were going to have to put that $2,500 a month between you and your wife, sort of student loan payment on a credit card. Like they didn't have to worry about that. And their lives are better for it, It's also easy to sit here now where like it all worked out for me and talk about how like, you know what I mean? Like I've been incredibly fortunate. And so I don't want to be the guy who's just sitting here being like, oh, all those idiots don't need to get,
It hasn't worked out for me quite yet. So I'm making the same argument as you. So don't worry about that. I'm still waiting for it to work out.
Let's squeeze some of the bitterness out of it. What say you, Eric, to what Chris, because basically Chris said the world needs more ditch diggers. That's what I got out of it.
That's the line. That's all it's going to get. That's it right there. That's it.
I second a lot of that because I feel like it's been about probably 4 years since I was practicing law, and I'm just now kind of figuring out what it was I should have been doing all those years when I was just in school. I was able to turn that part of my brain off, which was, okay, I know what I need to do this semester. I know what I need to do the next semester, and I'm just going to follow that path, and I don't have to think about what it is I actually want to be doing. I'm just going to do whatever this step is in front of me. And so now I'm, for the first time in my life, trying to think, I actually can just choose what I want to do. And I need to actively, not just I can choose what I want to do, I actually have to choose what I want to do. And I have to actively think about what it is my purpose is and what I should be doing. And I think school takes that away from a lot of people. And I think that deprives people of being able to find their purpose, which is what you should be doing in your 20s. And instead, kids are told, just follow this path, just do what you're told and it will work out. And so many people, especially my age, I think are realizing they're hitting their late 20s and they're like, I followed all of that and it didn't work out. And now I don't have the skills to be able to figure out what it is I should be doing. I don't have the skills to figure out how to make it work because I was just following instructions my entire life.
Yep. But that's what the government's for. You're good though. Yeah, I mean, they're just giving out money these days. So yeah, you're good. You're right. Good. And by the way, you're okay. So you're in your late 20s.
I'm 32.
32. Okay. So either way, you were in law school. So I'm trying to think. So you graduated
2015.
2015. Okay. So the economy was back on the way up. You were kind of like everything was hunky dory. There was no issues with the economy. I mean, graduating when I graduated law school, sort of 2000, I was a summer associate in 2008 and then graduated 2009, started practicing 2010. It was, living through that period of time, I think we were forced to kind of figure out a bunch of stuff for ourselves. This is me being the old guy. Being like,
you had it so easy, Eric. 2015, everything was perfect. There was no quantitative easing. ISIS wasn't a threat. The stock market wasn't completely inflated. It was all perfect.
Yeah. No, but Matt, you'll remember. I don't know what you were doing. Were you hedge funding back then? What were you doing?
What year?
2008.
Yeah, it was before I started managing a fund, but I was an analyst. I was an investment officer for a hedge fund.
Yeah.
Very important
piece.
Thing.
Yeah, very meaningful. Yeah,
I want to be clear with that.
I feel like I'm not saying we're Great Depression people or anything like that, but where I came out, there was a fear that you had to get yours, and if you didn't get it and keep it, it was or you did get it, it could go away anytime. It could go away anytime because there were people we were seeing losing their jobs, okay, who the week before, had been making $500,000 to $1 million a year, and They were gone. I lived lived across from a playground in Park Slope, Brooklyn, where I would be studying for law school during the day before I'd go to class. You'd look across and there was a playground, and it would be all nannies with their kids, right? With babies and carriages and playing on a week later, it was all the parents. They weren't working, they got fired and it was done. Okay. They were now home with their kids. They got rid of their nannies.
Yeah,
I know. And you're just like Tom Brady, right? Like Tom Brady. He was retired for 2 months and he was like, nope, go back. It was a scary time. And I'm not even saying that with any sort of, I think it shook a lot of people's confidence that like America, like was going to, if you did these certain things, everything was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to go through another cycle like that for sure at some point. But law school is only for certain people, it should be much more like medical school, I feel like, right? Although, you don't really have to be that smart to be a lawyer. I think you can be too smart to be a lawyer, right?
That's why I'm not an attorney.
There you go. There you go. Too
my
smart.
Intellect would be wasted.
Too smart.
That's why I started a podcast.
Yeah.
On that end, or that train of thought, like it takes like outside disruption sometimes for changes to take place. So I was thinking about like Uber and Lyft, for instance. If it were up to the taxi cab union, they would never say let's have this rideshare platform. It just sort of happened. It was like a market disruption. If I'm a business owner and someone steals from me, and there's a person out there, and I'll be very PC, and she can help, fight my claim better than someone else. Like, why don't I just hire her and like get it done? I mean, like the I'm not saying it as succinctly as I'd like to, but my point is like, is there a mechanism where people can vote with their dollars in a sense? We're just say like, I'm going to hire this person, or I'm going to hire Eric, assuming he didn't go to law school, because he worked for a lawyer, and he knows how to read a contract, he knows how to draft, he knows how to defend stuff. I mean, like
there's laws against that, Matt. Okay, there's laws against that.
Brings in the most evil organization in the country, which is the American Bar Association, which has prevented that from happening. There are some states where you can technically still apprentice and take the bar exam that way without going to law school. Kim Kardashian's doing that in California. I think she might have actually passed the bar by now.
I think she did. Pennsylvania, maybe Pennsylvania was one of those, or maybe that's common law marriage. I can't think of. It's one of those two. Pennsylvania there's a weird law in Pennsylvania.
It's definitely, I'm from Pennsylvania. It's definitely not in Pennsylvania, but there's a few states, but it's still like very frowned upon because the ABA doesn't get their hands in you as deeply if you go that
way. Exactly. So Matt, there are laws. There's literally laws on the book that say that you go to jail. I actually have a friend who went to jail, for the unauthorized. It's literally called the unauthorized practice of law.
Wow.
Guess who wrote that? A lawyer.
A dentist. Wait, no.
Yeah, exactly.
But
exactly.
I mean, weren't there similar laws by the taxi cab union, or like, driving a car for someone for a fee? That probably violated something. Is it just they didn't have the same lobby behind them?
No.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And it's different here. It's not even so much a money issue. I mean, money is behind it in a sense, but you got to understand something. It's almost like you got to think of politicians, right? Mm-hmm. Like, are we ever going to be able to like do anything about campaign finance reform? And the answer is no, because the people that literally write the laws. We write the laws, right? Mm-hmm. So it's different than the taxi cab situation where the taxi cab drivers and the owners can really vote with their dollars. They can say to a politician, who then goes and talks to a lawyer, by the way, change the law, right? The lawyers are going to be like, we're not going to change the law. We don't no, it's not going to, it's not going to happen. It's very similar to the medical profession, although the only difference is the medical profession actually you need to be qualified to be a doctor, there's.
Yeah. I mean, that's I'm uniquely qualified being married to a doctor.
I was just going to say,
you and Ben Shapiro, yeah.
And it needs to be as narrow as possible to keep the rates high. And I think, it's a matter of life and death, whereas you guys just push paper. No, but
exactly.
In all honesty, like Schuldeis, the clinic that treats hernia patients. I remember reading about them. They have doctors who do nothing but that hernia treatment. And then they'd have people who work for them, nurses or medical tech, just kind of, smart people. After 5-10 years, they could do that procedure way better than some accredited physician who hasn't been doing it, and there are rules in place where they can't do that. And on one hand, you can say, well, you're protecting patients, but I mean, assuming the patient's of sound mind and, isn't an adolescent, and say, like, this person might have not gone to Harvard Medical School, but has been doing this procedure, has done it 8,014 times with zero complications.
And I don't know if Matt, I don't know if you've ever spoken to any nurses, but they'll be the first ones to tell you that they know more than the doctors.
Oh, sure. Yeah. My sister-in-law's one, my aunt's one. They're very, because they're on like the front line, so to speak. I'm not saying there aren't doctors that are smarter at certain things. I mean, there absolutely are. It's just kind of a function of what are you doing the most, and you're probably going to be good at that. How you doing, bud? Handsome kids.
That's my associate. Yeah.
Well,
get back to work.
But I think and some of the issues you talk about with law school apply to medical school, but I think even more so like other like architecture school, like other professional schools, business school, you could learn a lot more working at McKinsey than you would at Yale. Well, I would argue.
I mean, there's states that require licenses for hair braiding now. I mean, you see that everywhere. This credentialing it takes over everything. So law school is one example of it, but you can forward that argument out to just about any profession at this point. It needs some sort of state sanction to be able to operate.
Well, my wife's MBA, I'm going to tell you the great story. I was studying grinding. My wife was at NYU, and I was at this shitty little law school in Queens called St. John's.
Oh, please.
And I was working so hard to study for law school, because as much as I'll joke that like law school is worthless, they make it really hard. Like, it's hard and everyone's gunning. And when you go to like a lower tier law school, you have to be in the top 10, literally top 10 people in order to get a good job, which is all I was going to law school for. So I was like, I might have killed a couple people in law school just to make sure that I was in the top 10.
There was someone watching this like, I never found my notes in 2012.
Exactly.
I was sitting next to Linden.
Exactly. My wife was at NYU getting her MBA, and I'll never forget this. I was home studying, and I came out of the back room, and she was watching TV with like 4 note cards. No joke, 4 note cards. And she's a lot smarter than me, to be fair. But I was like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I have a big midterm tomorrow. She was watching like Gossip Girl or something with 4 note cards. And I was like, why aren't you studying with your study group? Oh, they're all out drinking. And I'm like, but you have a midterm to, like, what are you talking? Like, I don't know if they gave a B out to anyone, but like, she did better than I did in law school. And I got to tell you, I don't brag about a lot, but I think I got 1 B in law school, and that was it.
Wow.
Right.
Congratulations.
So but my wife, I don't think got 1 B at NYU's at her MBA program. So like, but I don't know if they gave any out. So my point is,
they're not allowed to.
No, it's all about networking, right, Matt? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like what it is. And frankly, to sort of circle back on this whole thing, that's all it's about anyway. Yeah. Like any significant business investment or deal or anything that's put money in my pocket was derived directly from a relationship that I have. I'm still waiting on the situation with Matt. He's been useless to me, but
I've pushed a lot of deals his way. He's like, I'm going to check this out. I'll get back to you. Oh wait, no, 3 weeks ago.
But it's all about relationships. I mean, my first job out of law school at Weill, I got because of a woman who was working there who went to St. John's. That my second job, here in Nebraska. It was actually the only one that I got simply based on a resume. But when you're a New York lawyer and you apply to a law firm in Nebraska, they hire you. They don't even care. Like, they just going to hire you. So I got hired.
Fancy.
And then actually Bill Gross, the company that he used to work for that will be unnamed on this podcast, because I don't know if it's actually, I should be saying it, but the law firm that was representing that company, I was opposite them in a deal, and I got hired by Latham from that firm, from a partner that I knew there. So like, I guess what I'm saying is all of these are relationship based. Like I've never sent a cold resume. I just never have. And the reason for that is, I guess I have the ability to fool people. I don't know. Yeah. Like, I'm able to talk, I guess. I don't know.
Nice teeth.
They have nice teeth. I have nice teeth. These are Army teeth. Army teeth. All right. So we're talking about clerkships and professors and how they all went to they had to get that stepping stone to get a clerkship. So I'm at St. John's. I'm doing really well. And a buddy of mine who's sort of like my study buddy, we're hanging out. He's a lot smarter than me. That's why I'm studying with him. And so the way it works is your first year, you sort of, you get your grades, and then you go out and try to get what's called a summer internship, not a clerkship, but a summer internship. And that's over your first summer. There's tiers, right? No one gets the Supreme Court. There's no Supreme Court summer internships. It's sort of like circuit, and then district, and then magistrate, right? That's kind of like what you do. And then state court for like the real bottom feeders, right? You can go to state court. So I apply. You send out these mass applications. Eric knows, right? There's like a system, a portal, the whole deal. You send them out. I literally get like nothing back. Okay. And so like what happened is they went through the first cycle and they couldn't find anyone. So they were like, okay, send it out to like the people that we would normally not hire, but whatever. So me and my buddy get invitations to go interview at the Second Circuit with Sotomayor. We had no idea who she was. I mean, she was she was just a Second Circuit judge. So we show up, and the guy who was like the primary clerk who was doing the hiring went to Hofstra, which is, my law school's a lower tier law school. Hofstra's below that. So like I tried to bond with the guy, right? And I was kind of like, yeah, man, we're both like hard workers, and we had to like work. We didn't just get this job because we went to Yale or whatever. And so I go into the interview, and we continue that conversation in front of the other two clerks. And I'm going off. I'm like, I actually have to work. Like I didn't, just get, because there is a theory, and it's probably true. Once you get into Yale or Harvard Law School, you're set. That's what you have to do, is just get in. In fact, some of those schools don't even give grades externally, right? So I'm saying this, we're having this long conversation. The interview goes over the allotted time, and we're laughing, we're high five. He's loving it. The clerk's loving it because he's like, screw these other people that went to Yale. I don't get the job. My friend gets the job. So he ends up working for her and working with these clerks. And they tell him straight up, we voted for you because that other guy was such a douchebag about Yale, right? And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I'm thinking I'm like getting one over, and I'm like losing the job for myself. I felt like I ended up meeting some of those clerks, I think, at one point again. And it was like, it was funny. But like at the same time, that would have been great to have on my resume. I ended up working for a magistrate judge in Central Islip, Long Island, which is as illustrious as it sounds. Yeah.
And I'll play like CNN anchor in a couple minutes because we're wrapping up. But
okay.
Eric obviously wants to kind of abolish law, and I'll throw this out to both you guys. If you could just sort of wave a wand,
abolish law school,
the usual school. Sorry. Yeah. Whether it's about the legal system, the criminal justice system, law school, if you could change one or two things, what would they be?
I would shorten it. Like I said, I mean, I think the first step is to shorten it, and, everyone would see that, like, even with 6 months of law school, we're still not like, nobody's dying. Like it's not like a huge deal, but I really do think that it goes back to reforming the student loan, the student loan system. 100%. I mean, you just have to do that. It'll work itself out.
How would it be like where the schools actually gave the loans directly to the students? So they sort of.
Oh, they take on some of the risk. No, I like that.
Is that what you're getting at? I think Purdue University has some version of this. I actually forgot that I had heard about. I did hear about something like that. That would be great. I think the way to do it would be, to have some sort of requirement, the school to have some sort of requirement to either sign on to the loan or agree to some sort of, just like an investment, like some sort of projection, meaning like this is what, and if they don't hit that, okay, unlike every investment that I've ever made, there's no recourse, right? Yeah.
But like maybe there was a recourse, like maybe there was something where the school and or the in the private loan system, the bank that took it on, they lose a portion of the guarantee from the federal government. They have to take on some of that risk. So the market, again, I'm a pure market guy, and I feel like, and everyone says, well, look what the market's done here. And it's like, well, no, that's a regulated market, right? That's not a pure market. I think if you opened it up to the market, just like the mortgage market, if you didn't have, Congress putting their thumb on the scale and being like, you got to give people loans, I feel like it would work itself out, Now maybe there would be a level of fraud that you'd have to weed out, but I think that you really need to leave it to the market, because no one's making a loan. No one in a pure market is making a loan to me, first of all. So I would have avoided law school. Okay. They will make a loan to someone who went to Regis or, went to, whatever, one of those fancy dancy,
prep schools
or whatever. Those people would get into law school and they would get the loans. But guess what? They usually don't need the loan. Okay. So it's not a perfect solution, but I'm interested to hear what Eric is. I feel like Eric's thought about
this. No pressure, Eric. This is your time to wow us.
Yeah.
Seize schools' endowments and use them to pay off all of the outstanding student loans. That's my solution.
Wow. I like that. No, I like that solution. I do.
I mean, look, I love Chris's idea. I mean, if you're giving me the chance, I get one swipe at it, one swing of the bat. It'd have to be something radical like that. I like Chris's idea. If you're talking more practical, get the government out of the loan business, because it makes absolutely no sense when nobody has to take on any of the risk of giving out these loans. The government says, well, we'll spend $1 trillion on loan. Add that to our $40 trillion in debt we have. Who gives a shit, right?
You care.
And so now you're encouraging people to go to school and get these degrees that they shouldn't be getting in the first place. There's no reason. There's no market value in these degrees that they're getting. Yep. And so I'm with Chris. I think that would, over the long term, that would kind of correct a lot of these issues of people getting degrees that don't have any value in the marketplace, and people would actually think about going to school and going into debt and all these issues beforehand. So I like that, but I'd rather just seize the endowments and pay off the debt.
But the endowment one is bad for hedge funds and bad for a lot of my investments. I don't like that, because those endowments go into risky, crappy investments. So,
well, who would have thought having two lawyers on we'd go long? This is shocking.
Oh, hold on. I'll send you my bill. Hold on. I'm just,
please do.
I'm
looking forward to that.
We're only an hour in. It's good. We're
an hour into our 30-minute podcast. So
there you go.
we don't bill in 6-minute increments anymore.
Yeah. But Chris, you're as knowledgeable as you are handsome. This has been a lot of fun. Where can folks out there who have excess money, they might want to give it to you for some reason or hire you? Like,
did you put my email? Can you put my email in the corner? Can we do that?
We can do that. We can put your social feed, so we can next time you're in Mykonos, we can all watch longingly.
There you go.
Where can people, if you want them to, where can they contact you or learn more about you?
That's actually a good question. I don't know if I'm trying to think through whether I want any of your listeners to contact me.
Probably not.
I actually just started my own law firm, separate from the firm in New York, just to do sort of private equity type transactions that I do. And so they could lindenlawllc.com. That's how they could get in touch with me. But if they just want to get in touch with me and talk about law school and how stupid it is, my email address is clinden81@gmail.com. And I'm more than happy to have that conversation. And actually, as much as I like you, Matt, I think me and Eric are bonding over this law school thing.
Invite me to the wedding. I look forward to that.
There you go. There you go.
Chris Linden, Eric Savone, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.